I hope you had a good lunch. There are still some seats, I think, inside if you want to. Are we good to go, Vlad? Yeah? My name is Joachim Dyfvermark. I am an investigative reporter for the past 20 years. Started working for the big commercial station TV4 in Sweden, and then working on SVT, the public service TV station. But I would like to start this session by taking you back to Prague. Some 10 years ago, in November, I landed in Prague airport in the afternoon. It was a very cloudy day and the rain was hanging in the air. I was there together with Rob Evans, the guy with the glasses in the car. I borrowed him. He's an investigative reporter at The Guardian, the newspaper from the UK. I borrowed him because he's British and he's an expert in arms trade. We went straight to the hotel and I was very nervous. My hands were shaking as I adapted the hidden camera that I had under my shirt. We immediately went to this guy's house. Miroslav Greger, the industrial minister of the Czech government. We were there to be undercover. We had worked for 6 months, me and my Swedish team, on a corruption affair. The Czech government had received bribes to buy the Swedish military jet fighter Gripen. Hundreds of millions of dollars were transformed from the Swedish arms trader Saab and the British arms trader BAE Systems through an agent in Austria to the Czech government. We had copies of the secret agreement showing how much money, how many hundreds of millions of dollars the agent got. We had sources pinpointing that this guy was the spider transferring the money to the other ministers in the Czech government to buy the military aircraft. But we couldn't prove it. So I decided to do a crazy idea. I started a fake company, like a crisis management company, based in the UK, and we went undercover in the arms trade. We printed a lot of material. We learned how what so-called firefighters do when there's a crisis. You get the consultants to deal with the crisis. How shall the politicians do to get away? So we pretended to be those consultants and set up this scheme. And that was the reason for us going to the industrial minister that very day. And I was super nervous walking towards his house. And that's where everything started to go wrong. Because he wouldn't go out. I couldn't show him my business card. I couldn't show him the material that we have prepared. He only answered through the speaker at the gate. And then it starts raining. And the sun is going down and it's starting to get dark. And Rob Evans, who is a British, had a very British, not very business-like coat, a green wool coat, sucking up rain, smelling like a dog. So when we finally managed the industrial minister to enter into the gate where we were, he met 2 wet cats, one smelling like a dog. And when I handed over my business card, he looked at it and turned away and went inside. In order to save money, I had chosen the cheaper version of business cards, one that looked very good in the dry office of Swedish television, but couldn't stand the rain. So Rob Evans turns to me and said, "You know, I think he honestly believed we would kidnap him. I think it's time to go." It was a major mistake. We all do mistakes. I have had the pleasure working with some of you, and I know for sure that there is not one single investigative project where you don't screw up sometimes. But the thing is, you rarely ever seen those kind of mistakes in the final report. In the printed version, or in the radio version, or in the TV version. I finally did a story on the Gripen. Do you think I aired the fuck up we did in Prague? No. Not then. Today, I would have done differently. Today, I would use it as a way of telling a story. Because that's what we do. We tell stories. I've heard some of your stories in bars about things happening to people. Wonderful stories. But I don't see those kind of stories when the final investigative piece is being presented. Welcome to this session about storytelling and investigative journalism. Now, investigative journalism is about investigations. You know, similar to a police investigation, similar to a scientific investigation, or a factual report. The big difference is that we need to have an audience. We need to present the investigation in order for people to read it. The police investigation, they don't need to make a juicy story out of their investigation. Neither do the scientists. They need to publish facts. But that's not what we do. We write stories, or at least that's what we should do. Typical story. Girl meets boy. No, sorry. Could I have someone, technician, changing the channel, please? The thing is, what I'm talking about is actually this. Same thing. We need to stop publishing facts and start telling stories. We need to go back to the discussions that they had in the beginning of the 70s with the new journalism. And why is that? Well, forget BBC's Panorama. Forget CBS 60 Minutes. Forget little tiny Uppdrag Granskning where I work on Swedish television. Forget the national paper. Forget the regional paper. That is not the competition. This is the competition. This is what people prefer looking at. And what they produce is extremely good. This is storytelling at its best. Now, just to give an example, one of the streaming channels doing drama is Netflix. They are now active in all countries except for China, North Korea, Syria, and Crimea. Over the past 5 years, the value of stock has raised with 1,600%. In Sweden, the average consumer is looking at video 65 minutes per day. And Swedish television is the single most largest network in Sweden. We have the 2 biggest stations, we have the best budget, we have, we're the biggest. How many minutes do you think that the Swede will spend on Swedish television out of the 65? Let's hear it. 15? 10? Very good. I think that, hang on. It's below. I think that, I have to look at my papers. I think that Netflix has got 20 minutes. Okay, sorry. YouTube, 20 minutes. 17 minutes at Netflix and 9 minutes spent on SVT. 9 minutes out of the 65. And that's not included the time that we spend on Facebook, emailing. We have really tough competition. And our audience is getting used to stories told in a very professional way. And I'm not saying in a new way, because what I'm about to show you is like 2,000 years old. Now, does that mean that investigative journalism is dead? And of course not. The crisis for modern media does not have to be a crisis for investigative journalism. But it puts different demands on telling investigative stories. And I think that Serial is a very good example. Now, how many have listened to Serial? Season 1 or 2? Hands up. Really? Wow. You have something to do over the summer. All right. Let me give you some more figures. Serial is a pod. They were the first, or one of the first, crime pods. They do 1 hour per week over the period of 10 weeks. And they haven't produced the whole series once they start airing the first program. So it's kind of an ongoing investigation. Of course, they have prepared parts of it, but it's not done. It's not settled when they start airing. Now, they've done 2 seasons. The first season is about an innocent, probably innocent guy who killed his ex-girlfriend in the late 90s. And second season is about a soldier in a US soldier in Afghanistan. And you listen to it, you download it, streaming or download it. And 250 million people have listened to the 2 seasons. Season 1 has got a rating of 175 million people. And by looking at your hands, I can tell that their numbers are going up after the summer. You should really listen to it. Not only because it's good investigative journalism, you know, it's pretty standard. But the way they do it, the way they tell their story, that's the difference. That's how we can be inspired to look on what we have to do in order not to die. Because I really think that we have to stop doing stories for other journalists. We have to start doing stories for our audience. No matter if it's in print, in radio, online, or TV. We have to start working on storytelling. Now, is it rocket science? Before, everyone was sitting around the TV. It was super boring. As I said, I've been investigative journalism together with Sven Bergman for 20 years. And, you know, up until a year or 2 years ago, I did my stories based on the assumption that I thought I would do the right thing. I didn't have a method. I used to be a news reporter. I inherited that way of working into doing 1-hour documentaries. But I never sat down and started thinking of how do I tell our stories. And so this is new to me. For most of you guys, this is old news, maybe. But for me, after 20 years of doing quite successful investigative journalism, this is a new perspective. And I think it's really interesting and funny, because you can add something on top of what you really already know. I'm going to go to give you the brief model of storytelling, how it's done. And then I'm going to go into detail for how to build a chapter. TV or radio or print, doesn't matter. What makes a good story? Well, a good story, I could have started this session with showing you my CV, the names of the stories that I've done, all the awards I've had, started to going through models, and you all had lunch, you know, pretty full and dozy, and I would start producing facts. But instead, I started telling a story about Prague, hopefully grabbing your interest. Where would this story end up? A story is fascination, identification. And identification, we'll talk more about that when it comes to character, but and some tiny piece of information. Anna, are you here? Anna said that she was thinking about having a t-shirt saying, make it general and sexy. Ah, good. Yes. Have it general and sexy. A story is not information. That's a police investigation or a scientific report or a factual report. A story is a story. about people, something happening to that person. They are struggling and they are, you know, moving towards the final battle, and then, you know, it goes either way. If it goes good, it's a feel-good movie. If it goes bad, it's a tragedy. Fascination, identification, and some tiny, tiny information. This is the model of a storytelling arc. It could look like that. It could look like this. It can look like this. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of different models. And they all talk about the same thing. This is what the Greeks did. This is what people around the fire in the caves did. It's a typical 3-act theater. You introduce something, someone, a character, and a conflict. You deepen the conflict and the character, and it ends up in a climax towards the opponent, the antagonist, and something happens. There's a resolution in the end. You can apply this on every story. This is not something that someone invented. It's like having the oldest version of storytelling trying to you know, paint it, and it will turn out this way. Now, one would think that, you know, how boring to tell each story in the same way. Well, we go see movies, we go to Netflix, watch. They're all the same. They're introducing someone who is in a struggle. That person is forced into a final conflict or crisis towards someone or something, a hurricane or a bad guy, and there's a result. And that leads to a new action. And this is really basic stuff. But when I look on what I have done over the past 20 years, I'm not following this. I'm not using the tools provided for thousands of years in order to present my investigation. You know, I'm not using, I used to not using any model at all. I used to edit, and whatever I felt like I was going, I went there. And hopefully it turned out well. But I want to go back, and I want us to use the new demands that we have from the competition in order to make our stories better. Because in the end, it's the same thorough investigation. It's the same factual fact-checking. Everything's the same. The difference is we tell it better. We reach more people, and by that, we can change the society and get nice awards. Okay, I'm going to go through the different stages as I have looked upon it over the past 1.5 years, translated into storytelling in investigative journalism. This might be a bit quick, but again, anyone who's interested can go back and look at the models, because it's universal. Okay. First, you have the beginning, the prelude. This is where you describe the scenery. This is labeling the story. Is it a crime story? Is it a love story? Is it a social story? Children at an orphan? What kind of story is it? We need to tell the viewers what they are investing their time in. We need to set the geographical, the scenery, and we need to label the story. What kind of story is it? And that would be the stage. And we need to sell it. We need to hook the audience. And we can use different methods. One very efficient method is to ask questions. Because you do want them to invest the time in reading your long read or looking at a 1-hour piece. Everyone in Ukraine said that the investigation of the killing of Pavel was conducted thoroughly and correct. What if that's not true? You can ask questions. You give the question, that is also some kind of promise. You load the question and for the viewer to get an answer in the end. But you ask questions in the beginning. What if this is not the truth? What if the image of this company that we have is a fake? What if he's lying? What happens then? Ask questions. Second one is to actually promise a good story. By the end of this hour, your way of looking at the Ukraine police will change forever. How? I have to watch. You make promises. You sell the story in the beginning. And this has to be done. I can't remember the figure, but if you're going, as our platform is broadcast in television, we also have online, and then we have short sequences on Facebook. And it's like you have 3 seconds, or not even 3 seconds to hook the audience, if you're on Facebook. You really need to sell the story. You can use questions and promises. Second phase is presentation. Now, this, according to me, according to my opinion, this is where most of us get lost. A character. Someone that the audience can identify with. And when I say identify, that doesn't mean identical. It's not like they have to be a copy of the audience, but they will have to be able to identify. Take Superman, for example. He's the character, you know, Superman, the old Superman. He can fly. He have X-ray sight. I don't. I still loved to read the story and to see the film, because I could identify with the thought, how would I do if I could fly? Now, the character, Superman is a pretty good example, because the character also has to be human. Now, if Superman could, as he can, fly, and he's super strong and no bullets can kill him, he's got X-ray, can look through clothes on women, he's got a perfect life. That would be a super boring story if it wasn't for what? Clark Kent, yes, good, more? Kryptonite! and the love affair with Louis Lane. You know, he gets human. He can't fly. He has a crush, and it's complicated, as, you know, for all of us. So the character has to have a crack. And normally, when you have a reporter as a character, they're like Superman. They never make mistakes, you know. They go from one fact to another. We found this. Next time, we found this. And in the end, we can disclose this. There's never a gap. There's never a crack in the facade. They're not human. It's very easy for a fiction writer to create a character. You just write the bloody dialogue. If you do documentaries, it's kind of more tricky because you need to find a character that you want to portray. But it's still, you know, it's still doable when it comes to investigative journalism. God, it's so difficult because almost everything we do is investigative something that had already happened. Maybe years ago. It's not an ongoing problem. I want to show. I want to go back one step because I want to show you the character. Let's go back to the prelude. Let's go back to the start, to the catch. I want to show you. We did a story on Panama Papers. You know Panama Papers. And we cooperated with a journalist on Iceland. And we did the Icelandic angle with the prime minister having an offshore company, lying to the people. He was voted to be the clean politician. That's how he came into power. That was his sale pitch, to clean up. I'm the one you should trust. And then he lied about his offshore account with millions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. So that's the story we did. I'm going to show you how we did the prelude, the starting.
You will be there, okay? I will be there, the Prime Minister will be. This is the main camera, this is the Prime Minister. Then when Swedish television, if the Prime Minister would walk away, then I want to follow him.
Det vi ska göra är minst sagt kontroversiellt. Uppdrag granskningens team agerar lockbete för att få den isländska statsministern framför kameran. Och frågan är snart ska överrumpla honom med. Kommer att avgöra statsministern och den isländska regeringen framtid.
Mr. Prime Minister, have you or did you have any connections yourself to Russia? Myself? No. Well,
Sorry about the quality there. For those of you who couldn't read the subtitles, what the show host said, what we are about to do is highly controversial and will change the fate of the Icelandic government forever. Oh. And remember where we ended. He get the question, but he's not answering. So we leave there and then come back. Okay. Investigative stories, very difficult to find a character. Very difficult. In the Icelandic story, we created a character in order to tell this story. In the way that when I say created, it's not fake. We used the Icelandic reporter as the character. His story is wonderful. He was the show host of their investigative program. His daughter died as a teenager in a drug-related death. He went undercover, almost losing his mind, to disclose the drug cartel in Reykjavik. He was not compromising, so he was sacked from television. Everyone thought that he was gone forever. Everyone thought that the death of his daughter just, you know, made him disappear. So we used him and his story as a character, and I'm going to show you an example.